Hey everyone! I know people are just popping in, but let's just sort of meet and greet one another before we get truly started. First and foremost, the format of this is going to be a little bit different because my other laptop is in the shop, and that's the one that has all the mojo power to make sort of the intros look fantastic. So we're using a different format, and I am excited. So if you guys can hear me okay, let me know. I have somebody who says they can't hear sound, but usually that is generally from someone else's end. So just let me know if you can hear me okay. That would be great. We'll just do some audio check. Let's see. No sound either. Okay, so other people say you can hear. For some odd reason, it does that. I don't know why, but just make sure that you are good. Okay, you can hear me just fine. Hey, Cindy. Okay, so I'm definitely seeing some familiar faces, which is awesome. I've got Cindy who says, I can hear you. So we got a bunch of people who can hear me. So if you can't hear me right now, then please switch browsers, check things out. But so far we are good. Anyways, and a lot of people have been asking, can I watch this later? Yes, there'll be a replay afterwards. So don't sweat it. This is going to be a really hot topic. That's going to be a really hot topic. And I'm saying this with all the love in the world because I want to be able to preface everything that I'm about to say and just be able to tell you guys that in no way, shape, or form am I devaluing your pain. And whether that is physical pain or emotional pain, there is not an iota in me that is trying to come here and say, it's all in your head. Okay, so I want to make sure that I'm very clear about that right off the bat, because anytime that I've ever mentioned my viewpoint on PMDD, and for those of you guys who don't know what that is essentially like an extreme form of PMS, okay? And to the point that it is so challenging for women, and it's premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And, this is a condition that afflicts many women right now, where there's extreme amount of emotional stress. Some women even will say that they feel suicidal. But I've got a lot to say about this topic, and usually the first thing that happens is people get really defensive and really heated, and I completely understand. Hey, Monica. Okay, so we got definitely some people here. And Tammy from Pennsylvania, that's awesome. So I know we probably have people from around the world. I know some people are actually trying to tune in from the UK right now, but they're just kind of going, oh my God, I gotta go sleep. Or Australia. Any of you guys, please feel free to go sleep and then jump back in afterwards. So the first thing I want to be able to sort of start off by talking to you guys about, first and foremost, if you see me sort of looking over the side, I've got like 4 pages of notes that I want to go through. Definitely have prepared quite a bit for this. I want to talk to you guys about a brief history on the marketing to women based on their hysteria. That's actually a really, really darn important thing for me to talk about. And the reason why is because marketers are very sly when it comes to pumping out a specific drug or remedy to somebody based on, oh, well, you feel like this, or are you feeling sad? And then are you feeling completely angry? This is sort of this marketing towards hysteria. And truthfully, this is something that has been happening for literally almost 4,000 years. A history of almost 4,000 years of medical diagnosis of hysteria. Okay? And I keep saying this word hysteria because it has been for a very long time a shitty excuse for all the things that can go wrong in a woman, especially between the 1900s and the 1950s. And we have to look at this because this is really crucial, especially for the whole PMDD, to understand why we are at where we are. We can't understand where to go unless we understand our history. You see, essentially from the end of antiquity to the Middle Ages and in the Inquisition, women's hysteria, and I'm going to keep doing that because this is the term that they've labeled. So women's hysteria was considered supernatural, for example, or a manifestation of demonic possessions. which is just out of this world, okay, or witchcraft, which was always deemed as this really horrible thing. And I'm not going to get into that so much, but hysteria essentially came from the root word hystera in Greek, that's also known as the uterus. A lot of people don't realize that. Now, the reason why that this is important to understand is because they believed that the uterus was wandering around hungry for semen. I know that sounds really bizarre, but that's what they believed. And treatments for this, believe it or not, were things like vaginal fumigation, bitter potions, a device, believe it or not, that was inserted into the vagina that was made out of wool, a genital massage, which was quite often performed by male doctors, sometimes a midwife, but quite often male doctors. And at worst case, ovarectomies were done, which is the removal of ovaries. And the worst part, some women even endured cauterization of the uterus. Okay? And that's just, or sorry, the cauterization of the clitoris. I keep saying uterus, the cauterization of the clitoris, which is terrible. So genital mutilation. They believed this hysteria was when women read novels, specifically seductive ones, masturbation, homosexuality or bisexual tendencies, irrationality, or if you generally just were a bit of a troublemaker, or if you were into lying and deception, or if you got caught, lying. All those things were causes of hysteria. And interestingly enough, this diagnosis actually took off as women were out there trying to get various professions, get into various professions that, maybe men were more privy to, into various universities, because it was really challenging at that time. And this happened throughout the US and also in Europe. Marriage rates were actually falling at this time, and birth rates were actually declining. That a lot of the new woman was actually criticized because of intellectual, artistic, or simply because they didn't want to have children. And so this is really, to me, fascinating to understand the history of this. Now, you might be sitting here going, I have no idea what this means for PMDD, but hang tight, because it's important for you to understand that women have been thought of to be hysterical from these crazy old times when they believe that this uterus was wandering around. Obviously, they don't believe that anymore. But it's been a massive bargaining chip, and a massive marketing chip, I should say. And that's, something that I really want to be able to put that out there. And what's really important to understand is that these psychological and behavioral manifestations, okay, of hormonal and neuroregulatory imbalances observed in women who have been labeled have been treated with medication throughout the ages. And this is where we start to actually dive into the subject of PMDD. Because if we are looking at women like, oh, they're hormonal, oh, they're crazy. Like, how many of you guys have ever been told that you are crazy by various people? Now, we are going to talk a little bit about that, because there's a level of accountability that needs to be had. And I'm not saying an accountability of like, okay, I'm just going to go admit that I'm crazy. No, we're going to talk about accountability in terms of what you can do moving forward with PMDD. And it's not just going to be accountability. There's going to be lots more, trust me. But essentially, these medications that women have been given to treat their psychological issues have been more so in the last half century than ever before. So it's been medications like a Tic Tac. And that's really important to understand, because we are a society of women who are being medicated like crazy. So just want to check out some of the, Anna says here, my doctor diagnosed me with major depression a few years back and tried to get me on Prozac. Yet some of the side effects of taking the drug were suicidal thoughts. I said, no thanks. This is really interesting, to see this, because we are in a society of people who have been over-medicated. And I've heard people say, well, I don't know, when I was younger, like, I didn't have these problems. Well, no, because there weren't all these medications that were happening, antibiotic use, et cetera, et cetera. We even see here, Beth says, yes, I've been told to go on Prozac as well just 2 weeks before my period. just really, really, really interesting to hear that. You see, because we look at all these medications that are happening, you know, in hysterics long time ago, they were burnt at the stake, right? Now we're just medicated. Okay, and that's really important to understand. So here's a couple of stats. Mood disorders are epidemic, with depression affecting 20% of women. 20% of women. That is literally, and I think that is probably would be a way higher stat than that. And that's actually 2 times the amount that men actually are diagnosed. And back in the 60s, Valium was their top seller, and doctors were like, "Oh yeah, use it whenever you know you're feeling the need to do it." And they were essentially liberally prescribing this for women's hysteria until they realized it was addictive. Now, SSRIs like Prozac are essentially leading the pack, and they're being given to everyone from who've got PMS to hot flashes. And PMS affects women between 60 and 75%. That's in the US. And I would say that Canada and probably the UK and likely even Australia are somewhere around the same. So that's incredibly important to understand. The other thing that I find interesting when we start to get into PMDD is, how did this come about? How did we go from having PMS and then all of a sudden having PMDD? And every single time that I'd say to people, I'm like, you realize that that's a made-up medical term that you've been sold to by pharmaceutical agencies. And people go, you have no idea. You have no idea the pain I go through every single month. And I'm like, I'm not devaluing your pain. But I'm telling you that the need for identification with a condition is something I see quite often in practice. And whether that is with fibromyalgia or PMDD, women get very testy the second that you're like, listen, being labeled as something is almost like saying, this is like, what can I take for my PMDD? And what I want to talk to you about today is that it's not about just taking something for your PMDD or your PMS, because it's not actually the root cause. It's a symptom. Okay, so super important to understand that. So what happened was, when you actually look at PMDD, the patent on Prozac was expiring. I don't know if people realize that, but the patent on Prozac was expiring. And so it became something called Sarafem, okay, which is also the same thing as Prozac. So it just essentially got a brand new name, and good old marketing got in there, and they created a new disease called Premenstrual Dysphoric Disorder, PMDD. And this was the repackaged as an antidepressant as a solution for the condition. And that is a fact. But I know that a lot of women who are listening in will get incredibly heated every single time I talk about this. And again, remember that my intention is not to devalue you, but to actually empower you. And I think that the second that we actually begin to create labels for ourselves, we pigeonhole ourselves with who we are. We actually are stripped of some of our power, because now we are confined to this condition that we could potentially have until we actually go into menopause. If you're okay with that, then rock on with your bad self. But I'm not okay with that with the women that I work with. My job isn't to sit here to coax anybody. My job is to get women well and to empower them. And for those of them who understand and want to sort of push past and go, I'm going to open my mind to the potential that this could actually be something. The fact that it is a fact that Prozac's patent was expiring and it got repackaged as an antidepressant for a completely new condition called PMDD. That's where Sarafem came. It's great for revenue, but it's bad for women. And what I find interesting is I took this picture earlier and from Maud, who posted this, and I want to be able to say this. She said, I didn't see, so she was commenting about my post, and she said, I didn't see it as offensive at all, which is great. Knowing how modern medicine works today, how labeling works, and how it helps pharmaceuticals, it makes sense that there would be a label for something that is probably not a mental disorder as it's now classified. PMDD was added to the list of depressive disorders in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders in 2013. And when you think about it, I'm a lot more pissed off that a hormone issue labels me as a mental disorder. I thought that was actually a really powerful statement that was coming from her. So I'm just going to actually see what Milena has to say here. She goes, after having my daughter, my mood bombed and my meds saved my life about 7 years in. I think the hormonal turbulence shouldn't be masked with drugs. It should be resolved. I want off these meds. Thanks for the talk. My pleasure. And it's just something that I want people to understand. Why is this happening? So let's actually get into that, because I think that it was so important for me to talk to you guys about the origins of this, how you've been sold to with this. And now let's talk about why it's happening. Several reasons. One of the ones that I definitely want to point out is we have this massive imbalance between omega-6 and omega-3. Now, for those of you guys who have no idea the difference between the two, omega-6 in excess can definitely be pro-inflammatory. And it's about having a proper balance between the two. But the problem is we don't have a proper balance between the two. In fact, some studies are even citing that there's a 49-to-1 ratio between omega-6 being 49 and omega-3 being 1. Omega-3 is what we know in fish oils, and it's really anti-inflammatory. And omega-6, you can find those in grains. A lot of grains are fortified, especially if you are, some pastas and breads. Even some eggs are fortified with omega-6 based on what the chickens are consuming. Low fat and non-fat milk filled with sugar. Okay, so these are all very pro-inflammatory foods. And we're seeing this rampant in society. Vegetable oils, canola oil, those types of oils are going to be terrible. And this is a massive problem in society because we're consuming way too much omega-6 and not consuming enough omega-3. And omega-3 is obviously the fish. If you are someone who's like, I don't like fish, cool. You can do a fish oil. You can even do an algae oil if you are vegetarian. There are many algae oils that are available out there, and some of them don't even have the repeat that the fish oils do have. So, that is definitely a huge part of it, because when we see these pro-inflammatory foods, not just gluten, but especially dairy, wreaks havoc on your PMS, wreaks havoc. And when we see these inflammatory foods that are consumed, it actually disrupts something called GABA. GABA is essentially helps just to chill you out, to just kind of keep it as layman as possible. And when it's massively decreased, because you're eating all these inflammatory foods, I've had people say to me, like, I can't control myself. Like, I am addicted to this shit food. And there's reasons why that can be happening. Okay, so Beth says, I'm staying away from dairy and I haven't noticed a difference. Well, girl, I've only mentioned one thing. So this is actually something that I want to touch upon. The amount of people who come to me and go, I cut out gluten, I didn't see a damn thing. I cut out dairy, I didn't see an improvement. Because here's a reality check and a truth bomb for all of you listening in. Health is an all-encompassing picture. You can drink all the green smoothies you want. You can take all the supplements you want. If you actually don't have the mindset portion, for example, which we are going to talk about, you will just be someone who's super miserable with green shit on your face. And that's a reality. Health is all encompassing. So please, if you took a supplement and you're like, this natural shit didn't work for me. Well, no, it didn't work for you because of the fact that there's more to the picture. PMS, PMDD, and any other aspect of health ain't no different. That's definitely one part. And speaking from that, the second thing, and these are all the reasons why this has happened, not what you can do, but why this has happened. So we're not even on the third part yet, but stress. Stress decreases progesterone levels because when cortisol is out of whack, it begins to essentially munch away at your sex hormones, namely progesterone. And that's incredibly, incredibly important to understand. Women will end up when they're stressed, they end up turning to alcohol. Alcohol actually increases estrogen. A lot of people don't realize that. It doesn't mean to say that you can never have a glass of wine. It just means that if I always have this rule of thumb is never drink when you're stressed. Because if you're drinking when you're stressed, you are literally creating a pattern. So again, I'm just going to reiterate, these are all the things of how this has happened. The first we talked about was the omega-6 to the omega-3 balanced ratio. Talked about stress as another part of it, because we have people, going to alcohol, they get really stressed out. They end up getting super tired. They're consuming numerous amounts of coffee. They don't have, women, we suck at boundaries. How many of you guys can even say you have healthy boundaries right now? How many of you guys can say that you actually have healthy boundaries? Let me know. Because from what I see, especially from women I work with, when I start working with women in my hormone membership group, Sexy Lady Balls, which is a hormone membership program, women come in, and some of them come in incredibly reactive. And they're like, well, just tell me what I'm supposed to do, what I'm supposed to eat, what I'm supposed to take. I'm like, well, what are your boundaries like? Because like I said, if that is a huge problem for you, this is going to be an issue. I've got Stacey Williams, thanks to SLB, I'm getting there. Yeah, Kat, or Kate, I should say, sorry. Monica says, I can because of you. I've clearly got some ballers who are listening in, and I'm always so freaking proud of my girls. I'm telling you, my sisters. Stacey Williams says, nope, she has no boundaries. So these are really, really big, big things. The other thing is the amount of estrogen that we have in our world is crazy, flat out cray-cray. We can get it from obviously soft plastics, hard plastics even, cigarette smoke. Believe it or not, cigarettes also increase the amount of estrogen as well. Commercially raised meat. I've gotten into very, very, very hot debates with people where they're like, meat is terrible for you. You got to go vegan to balance your hormones. And while we do have vegans in the program, and I respect that very much, I don't believe that meat is the devil. I don't. And I'm also not going to get into a political debate about it here either, because that's not what this is about. But I can tell you, if you're purchasing commercially raised meats and you've got estrogen-related conditions like PMS or PMDD, it's time to knock that shit out and buy either organic, naturally raised, you know who the farmer is. Grass-fed's always, king, but it might not be financially feasible for some people as well. Other sources of estrogen is also commercially raised dairy products. I don't even really advocate dairy in my program at all, as you heard me say. Tap water, believe it or not, is even contaminated with pesticides and insecticides, and all these things can actually end up mimicking estrogen receptors. A lot of people ask me, well, what water filter do you use? Well, as you guys probably have seen from my videos, I'm in a small apartment in downtown Toronto. We rent it. So I use the Berkey system, and I'll actually write that down for you. I have no affiliation to them. Water filter. I'll just show you. That's essentially the water filter that I use. I find it helps amazingly because it filters the water. The water actually tastes different. We've got copper pipes in the building. And the building is old. It's from like 1953, I think. So, you got to be careful, especially if you're living in an apartment as well. So the Berkey water filter is definitely one of my favorites. Other things that actually increase estrogens, personal care products, like you're looking at like shampoos, makeup, some various forms of makeup. So when I even talk about detoxing your makeup bag, you don't got to throw everything out right away. Just when you're done using your foundation, you can just search out for various foundations that are going to be healthier for your body. So really, you don't have to do everything overnight. Otherwise, you're going to feel overwhelmed. Soy. The amount of people who come into my program who are like, but that's my protein source. And I'm like, yes. And you've got either PMS, fibroids, crazy heavy periods, PCOS, endometriosis. Stop eating soy. People then ask me, well, is fermented soy okay? Don't eat it. It's just not something I would recommend for estrogen-related conditions. And PMDD is absolutely no different. I definitely can do a segment on makeup for sure, Nadia. So I will make sure that I put that in the lineup of show ideas for you. Definitely. So that's a great suggestion. Thanks, love. The other thing, believe it or not, that's filled with estrogen are dryer sheets. You don't need dryer sheets. You don't need them. I don't use them. You don't need them. And the birth control pill as well. Birth control pill also can increase estrogen. You know, and I find that is a huge one because people don't realize that the type of, is fish okay? So yeah, Gabrielle asks, is fish okay? Yeah, so fish is okay. Fish, especially cold water fish, whether it's sardines, mackerel, always check out the sustainable guide for fish to see what actually is not going to, you know, be high in mercury so that it's actually healthy for you. So it's a great question. Okay, so those are actually really big ones. Another one is poor liver clearance. And a lot of people think poor liver clearance is because of the fact that, oh, I've had, so much fat. I've eaten so much fat or all that. No, it is not because you've eaten a lot of fat. Poor liver clearance is as a result of actually consuming too much sugar. Anything that breaks down to sugar, excess carbohydrates, and I'm not saying carbs are bad, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, but excess carbohydrates is definitely a big one. So those breads, the pastas, all that stuff. If you are gaining weight, and if you've ever gone to your doctor and gotten something called an LFT test, which is a liver functioning test, they're going to measure your enzymes. And it doesn't just mean that people who are larger and are curvier babes are the only ones can end up having, a congested liver. Women who are actually skinny as well can also have a fatty liver. 90 million Americans, guys, have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So where are you getting it if it's not coming from alcohol? All the things that break down to sugar. I'm not talking about like, oh, but I'm consuming fruits. Oh God, that's terrible. No, the reality is people are eating a lot of processed shit that's filled with sugar. Like I said, the low fat, the non-fat milks is filled with sugar and all those carbs. And the reason why is because back in the 50s and 60s, there was a guy by the name of Dr. Ansel Keys who came out and said, hell, you know what? All these, fats, saturated fats like butter, they promote cardiovascular diseases. And so everyone thought saturated fats were bad for them. And even though this has not been confirmed, there was a massive correlation all of a sudden when Dr. Ansel Keys, who was known to falsify his studies, who falsified that study, I should say, and was promoting whole grains, so high carb, low fat. And all of a sudden you see this massive rise in obesity. It is one of the biggest travesties in nutrition. So when we wonder, well, how the fuck did we get here with PMDD? Look at the amount of inflammatory foods we're consuming, the imbalance in the ratio from omega-6 to omega-3s. Look at how much estrogen is in our world. And I listed off a ton for you guys. Look at the amount of stress that it's in our world and the lack of boundaries that most women have. If you try to supplement or you try taking out gluten or dairy and you're still like, nothing has worked. How are your boundaries? Where are your stress levels at? Because that's a huge factor in the mix. Huge, huge, huge factor. Wendy says, dryer sheets, yikes. Yes, I'm telling you. I love learning from you. Thank you, girl. I really appreciate that. Tammy says, I was just told 6 months ago I have a fatty liver and I don't drink. Yeah, so if you're told you have a fatty liver, it's non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, chances are it's coming from the amount of carbs and sugar that you are eating. That's going to give you a fatty liver. And that poor liver clearance is going to play a big, 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 big role in the conjugation of your hormones, specifically estrogen. So if you have a fatty liver, your liver has two phases of detoxification. And phase 1 and 2 need to be working adequately. And if they're not working adequately, the problem that ends up happening is that these estrogens that are supposed to be flowing out into your bile and then they just take residence in your poop and then you're supposed to poop it out, that's not happening because there's not proper liver clearance. So what happens is it doesn't go to that next stage. And those estrogens can become harmful and they begin to build up and accumulate in the body. And people think that you have only one estrogen. You have actually 3 estrogens: estrone, estradiol, estriol. And those have metabolites. And I call them like their children. So some are good kids and some are just little jerks. Okay. And the little jerks, when there are plenty of them, which happens when your liver is congested, by the way. And that's when we start to see where women can end up having issues with PMS. Extreme forms of PMS, which PMDD, which was made up by pharma. But people will always fight me on it. But that's our need to identify. Because if I can identify that I have a home, I can identify with this. But if you can just learn all these things I'm listing off, and I've got a couple of more, which might shock you, is actually, if you're like, yes, tick, 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 tick. Then the next step is, let's take radical responsibility. And this is what I do when I work with women in Sexy Lady Balls, my hormone membership program, because there is a certain amount of responsibility you should have towards your own health. If you were expecting to go to someone and just go, fix me, then you got to be out of your mind, truthfully. Sherry says, I find it hard staying on track with eating good. I can go for 2 months really well, find my moods improving, and then I fall off the bandwagon. Any tips on staying on track would be great. I do. In fact, some of the tips that I actually have for you, Sherry, is the fact that I think that you can, sometimes, especially with women, like say, for example, in Sexy Lady Balls, what I do is I say, like, listen, for the first 30 days, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. It needs to be a little bit more restrictive. After those 30 days, you can start to kind of bring some of this stuff back in. Because I don't believe in cheat days. I don't believe that you have to be perfect all the time. That if all of a sudden, Sherry, all of a sudden you were like, you know what? I went out with my husband and I had some wine and I had a little bit of gluten. I'd be like, oh shit, you're human. Because you are. The problem is that we've gone so far with this. Unless you're celiac, then you're going to be in tons of pain. But the reality is that we've gone so far to be able to be like, oh my God, I got to be so good, so good, so good, so good, so good. And then you're like, screw it, I'm going to rebel against this. I'm going to fall off the bandwagon huge, which is the last thing we want. Sustainability is about making sure that we're good most of the time. And that if you end up having something, that isn't great, then you're human. The other thing to be able to understand about this picture is if you're someone who consistently falls off the bandwagon, like, okay, I'll get on something for like a week and I'm done, or I can't make it till the end of the week, and all of a sudden I'm just like, I'm binging and I'm eating crap and I'm drinking loads and stuff. Doesn't mean I never drink, because I do. But if you are consistently doing all these things that are just like, you can't seem to get on track, then there has to be an emotional issue of what are you running away from? And only you can actually identify that. And quite often with people is they've developed these unhealthy boundaries because of the fact that they have no boundaries to begin with. I do want to move on to a couple more things here is poor gut health. If you are not eliminating, so if you're constipated and you're like, I've got horrible PMS or PMDD, and you're not pooping, where do you think your estrogen's going? Where do you think your toxins are going? They're not. They're staying in your bowels. And you've got a bunch of blood capillaries that are hooked up to that and go and suck that shit, literally. All those toxins. And your blood becomes toxic. And when that happens, believe me, you're not going to feel great. So you need to be eliminating. And the other thing that we've also noticed in society is that friendly bacteria has decreased substantially, and mainly because of the mass use of antibiotics. Even birth control really fucks with your friendly bacteria, okay? That's the reason why that I always tell people, get on probiotics. Get on probiotics. It will be one of the best things that you can do for yourself. And the reason why I always suggest the starter pack from Natron, so their Healthy Start System, is because they've got these 3 little bottles in, okay? And I've seen this actually work better than people who were taking 80 billion per live cell. This is only literally like 6 billion per live cell. You might be like, I'm taking like 80 billion, 100 billion. It crushes that. It doesn't actually. It's about quality over quantity. I've seen people take this and get in my program and get detox reactions. That they actually, and that's the reason why I like it, because there's 3 bottles in here, okay? So you literally can go from taking these 3, so 1 capsule at breakfast, and just go from taking 1 capsule from 1 bottle and just stay there every single day until that bottle is done, and then move on to the next one. So that's definitely one thing that I would definitely say. Antibiotics can actually interfere with a hormone in your body, HCG. And the interesting thing is that this can actually cause uterine shedding to delay your period. A lot of people don't know that, but antibiotics can actually really interfere with this hormone of yours. And because it can actually cause that uterine shedding, it can delay your period. That's a kind of a big thing to understand, and a huge thing that we don't talk about very much with antibiotics. It can change your body's metabolism, your metabolic performance, believe it or not, and your ability to sustain a steady hormone level. Not to mention it really messes with all your good friendly bacteria. And the lower your friendly bacteria is in your gut, the higher your stress hormones are. Another thing people didn't realize. So I think that that's really important to understand. And Natron is on the line today. Hello, friends. Really important to understand, because if we don't have healthy bacteria in our gut, which is where it all begins, you might not be eliminating properly. You might end up experiencing bloating. You will end up having higher stress hormones. And a bunch of you guys are like, oh, I have no boundaries. Oh my God, I'm so stressed. Oh my goodness. I don't know what to do. Start off by taking probiotics. And that definitely is a part of the piece of the puzzle. So the probiotics harmony, just so you know, I'm going to put up her question here, is, sorry, the light always kills it, but Natron Healthy Start System. So I'll actually hide your comment and just put here, Natron Healthy Start System by Natron. So that definitely is one very crucial place that I would start. And what if you have SIBO? You would still take that probiotic. Hands down. I do monthly broadcasts with Natasha Trenev, who's the owner of Natron. And SIBO is absolutely fine to, the probiotics are totally fine to take when you've got SIBO. I just want to go through some of the questions because I know a lot of people who've got questions. So Chanda says, antibiotics, not colonics, are what flushes good flora. Yes, I didn't say colonics, did I? So Milena, and if everyone else didn't get that, it's Natron Healthy Start System. And you can end up getting it if you end up just going to their website. It's called natron.com, and just search for their Healthy Start System. Okay, and they've got one that's dairy-free as well. So those are important things that I want to be able to bring up. How do you empower yourself? Okay, how do you empower yourself? So Tammy, I know that you're asking where you can buy Natron. Check out the link there, natron.com. Just whatever you do, please don't buy from Amazon because it will not be shipped in a cold pack. And Natron ships in a cold pack. So that's actually quite important to understand. Ways to be able to empower yourself. The first thing is look at your diet right now. Are you consuming a ton of excess grains? Are you just like every single, like maybe breakfast, it's a bagel, and maybe at lunch, it's like pad thai or pizza or tons of rice, or maybe it's a sandwich. At lunch, do you have meat and potatoes type thing? Are all those things that you are actually struggling with, that you're consuming a ton of? If that is the case, then you need to really scale back. And I'm not saying never eat grains for the rest of your life, but if you're over consuming it, then you need to really pack off and look at your diet and go, I'm going to replace it with 50% vegetables. That is incredibly important. And yes, I would add in an omega-3 supplement, because we're talking about before about got to get off the dairy, got to get off the gluten. Let's look at a really proper omega-3 supplement. You've got a fish oil or an algae-based supplement, and that will really, really help as well as a starting point. We talked about probiotics as well. That's also really important. The other thing that I suggest, especially for liver clearance, is St. Francis. I'm just going to write this up here because it's just going to suck to like try to put their product because the light always kills it. So St. Francis. Herb Farm, Hepato DR tincture. And this is essentially a herbal tincture. See if you guys can see this. You see that? Hepato DR? Ugh. I'm telling you, the light kills it, doesn't it? The light kills it. I'm gonna try one thing. Because I love you guys, I'm gonna try one thing. Let's see if I can take this light down. Maybe that'll help. Ugh. Okay, so a little dark. A little better? Not really, eh? Shitty buzz. Okay, well anyways, what I've written up there is exactly what it says on the bottle, so just go with that. Okay, so improve your liver clearance. And one of the ways to do that is definitely with a bitters tincture. And the reason why, can you take Hepato DR forever? I honestly would switch from doing the Hepato DR and then doing their Canadian bitters combo. There's a lot of people who try to private label these companies' herbs, which drives me insane because it's, in my opinion, unethical. So just go directly to St. Francis Herb Farm. You can just Google that online, exactly what you've got here down below. If you are taking the Hepato DR, I wouldn't suggest taking it forever, but you can sort of switch 3 months on and then switch even to their Canadian bitters combo. When I spoke to a herbalist, a master herbalist I knew, I remember asking her, what's one herb that she would always have with you? And she said, honestly, a bitters combo, because as you get older, your digestive function decreases. And if you've got PMDD and you're sitting here going, where's my magic bullet? This is where I'm looking at you going, newsflash, there isn't one. You have to look at your diet. You have to look at making sure you've got optimal, good, friendly flora, especially if you've been on a rounds and rounds of medication. Looking at your liver clearance, making sure that you're doing that. And also, I know this sounds really bloody simple, but water. And adding in lemon to your water is so amazing because the liver loves sour foods. Loves it, loves it, loves it. Allie asks, can I get your thoughts about the paleo diet? I think the paleo diet is great. I actually don't label myself in my profession as like, oh, I'm paleo or I'm keto or anything. I do enjoy a high-fat, low-carb diet. But if you actually check me out on Instagram, for example, which you can find me under Sexy Food Therapy, you're also going to notice that on Instagram, for example, I've literally had a bowl of oatmeal, steel-cut oatmeal one day. So I label myself as human. And I think that that's really, really important. And guys, as I'm going through this, because I'm going to go through definitely some more tips for you guys, in the actual post above, we actually have put, and I'll just copy this little link again, but I have a free PMS guide that if you haven't actually downloaded yet, it's actually includes even more info that I'm describing to you here. So I'm just going to show this here. Free PMS guide. So the other thing is, limit your alcohol intake. If you're sitting here telling me, Melissa, I feel like shit, oh my God, and you're drinking every single night, you gotta back off. And also because of the fact that people can drink in Italy 1 glass of wine a day and they're really healthy. Yes, but if did they start off in excess? Because we have to back that up. Your situation is not necessarily comparable to somebody in Italy drinking 1 glass of wine a day. And to compare yourself to that, which I've seen people do, is crazy pants. Does not make sense. The other thing that I want to be able to bring up to you is also zinc. Zinc. Now, it's really important not to take zinc long-term because you can actually offset your copper balance. But one of the things that I think is great and is cheap and cheerful, it's called, see that? Liquid zinc assay. Assay? I feel like I'm swearing when I say that. Liquid zinc assay. And the reason why that I suggest that, and I'm just going to put the light back on because it's getting dark. The reason why that I actually, and then we have light. The reason why that I actually suggest the liquid zinc assay, it's actually not a zinc supplement. It's a zinc test, okay? It's a zinc test. So what you are going to do is you're going to end up you're going to end up putting this zinc assay test onto a tablespoon. Okay. And literally, if you're like, where do I buy it? Where do I buy it? All you have to do is just literally write in Google, liquid zinc assay. Can you see it? There we go. Oh, hell, I think I just found a way to do this. Liquid zinc assay. They're pretty much all the same. Pour it on a tablespoon, put it in your mouth, and then go for like 30 seconds. Do a little dance if you want to. Then you can spit it out or you can swallow it. If it tastes like water, chances are you are zinc deficient. If it tastes bitter or metallic-y, no, metallic isn't exactly a word, but metallic, bitter, kind of like a crappy taste, then you are not zinc deficient. So if it tastes like water, then you are zinc deficient. If it does not taste like water, then you are, so if it tastes bitter or metallic, you are zinc deficient. And the interesting thing is that if you were to get zinc, because you were like, oh my God, this tastes like water, Melissa, I did the test, I ordered it online from Amazon for like 20 bucks, and you taste it and you're like, okay, it's like water. What you are going to end up doing from that point on is you're going to get zinc picolinate. So zinc picolinate is a great, an amazingly absorbed zinc in the body. And the reason why that I suggest zinc is because it lowers inflammation. It's a stress mineral as well. And we haven't even gotten to boundaries yet, Heather, trust me. It also is great for depression, anxiety. If you're suffering from bloating, did you know that zinc actually helps to manufacture stomach acid? Zinc is a stress mineral. And when we're stressed, our bodies are like, oh, hell, you want me to digest, girl? No, I'm going to go chase that bear that's chasing me. So really important that your zinc levels actually decline because your body is munching on any single nutrient that it has to be able to withstand the stress. Zinc being one of them. And zinc actually helps you manufacture stomach acid. The other thing is it's really good if there's a lot of irritability as well. But you don't want to be taking zinc long term because you don't want to offset your copper balance. So I always suggest do a zinc picolinate around 50 milligrams, okay? And do that for like roughly about a month. Keep testing yourself every single week and see how you do. So take the zinc at breakfast every single day for a month. If you drink lots of alcohol, if you smoke a lot of cigarettes, take the zinc test. Really, really, really important. And when you end up doing that after a month, if after every single week you're still retesting yourself and you're like, oh my God, it's supposed to taste kind of crappy, you can either discontinue it altogether or you can take a zinc copper balance supplement. Or you can just lower the dose down to like 20 milligrams and do that. So that really helps. So interesting fact here, a 1994 study in fertility and sterility found compared to women without PMS, women with PMS had lower levels of zinc during the second half of their menstrual cycles. So I always make sure that women test their zinc. This is something that given you guys some top information from my hormone membership program in Sexy Lady Balls, because I do always say to women, like, get your zinc tested. It's something you can test for yourself, and it's cheap and cheerful. So I'm giving you guys definitely some awesome info from that. And then the last thing is those boundaries. And I know that a lot of women who are listening in have said, beforehand was that, oh my God, I struggle with boundaries. I struggle with boundaries. What I always suggest is, what are you so angry about right now? What are you so angry and so upset about and so resentful about right now? Write them all down. And then when you do, I want you to go back and look at it and go, where was I responsible for that? Because a lot of women say to me like, Melissa, I can't get on top of this. I'm so stressed out. I don't know how to do this. Like I said off the top, you can eat all the great food. You can take all the supplements you want. But if you are someone who is super stressed, none of it's going to work. None of it. So I think it's really important to understand and to identify your own boundaries. Ask for help. And take radical responsibility. Women will say to me, what stones and crystals can I wear? And what malas can I wear? Like, girl, I am all about stones and crystals, and I'm all about it. When people say, like, with accessories, you take one thing off, I put like 4 things on. So I'm all into that shit. But my issue with it is that if you really want to know how to get your power back, you have to take radical responsibility for where you're giving it away. And from what I've learned in life, is there are going to be a lot of people who are going to tug at you. They're going to drive you absolutely crazy. And you have to be better at saying no. And you can't look at it and go, oh, I'll try to do it. You know how much I can't stand when people tell me they try to do something? Oh, I'm going to try that. No, you're not going to try it. You're going to effing do it. Like, stop complaining about the same thing over again. Stop talking about the same thing over again, and then wonder why things aren't changing. It's the definition of insanity, repeating the same thing and expecting a different result. That's a really big thing. A mistake repeated over and over and over again is not a mistake. It's a fucking decision. So you have to be able to see that. And that's really important for you guys to understand, because I'm not even saying this to be mean, but when I look at women who've got any type of PMS or this PMDD that pharma did actually make up and sold you on it, then every single time that I see that, and I go to women, I go, okay, let's just start off with your stress first. Where can you take accountability for everything you're stressed out? How many times are you saying, I love Emily's little quote here, so I'm going to post it. Do or do not, there is no try. Yoda. Love it. If you are looking at all the stuff that you're stressed out about, where are you not actually taking accountability? If you keep doing, if you're like women that I always see in practice are women who give, and then they get super pissed off that someone either backstabbed them, took from them, or that they're exhausted and burnt out. And I'm like, well, shit, maybe if you realize that you have to stop giving as much as you do, because boundaries create space. There's a very intelligent and beautiful yoga teacher of mine, Donna Wilding, who said, Melissa, boundaries create space. And it's the reality, because it allows you to love bigger. So if your intentions are, I want to love bigger, I want to help people, I want to be a better wife, I want to be an all-star mom, I want to be great at my job, I want to have more friends. Stop feeling like you have to overextend yourself to get that result. Because I'll tell you, in life, if you are consistently stressed, you will mess up your hormones before you do anything. And then don't come to me and ask me for a silver bullet. Then get pissed off when I tell you that PMDD was a made-up term. The reason why that it's so vicious versus like this extreme form of PMS is because our diets continually and are declining and they suck. It's because our stress is completely out of whack. It's because our gut microbiome, all that friendly flora, is just not where it should be. It's not even there half the times. And then we wonder, why is this happening? This didn't happen 20 years ago. Of course not. The world is different now. And it requires different action. And it requires you, women, listening in to step up. And I think that that's really, really important. And I want to be able to just leave on that end note and also remind you guys to please download that PMS free guide above. There's a ton more info in there. There's a recipe that's included in there, and more things that you can do to be able to help your PMS and your PMDD. And I really hope that you guys have enjoyed this live stream. There has been a ton of info, literally 4 freaking pages of notes that I wanted to be able to give to you guys. And I hope that this has helped. Thank you for your words, says Heather. You're very welcome. And this is awesome. Thank you. You're welcome, Beth. And I hope that you guys understand that a lot of the information, when, it's never that I'm trying to be harsh with it. Some people do feel that way. And if that's the case, then maybe I'm not their practitioner, and that's okay. There's always somebody out there for everyone. And I'm not really right for everyone. But I definitely am not going to end up giving you guys what you want to hear. I'm going to give you what you need to hear. If that means that you are going to get better, it means you're going to get empowered, because you empower just one woman. And this is statistically proven. All you have to do is empower one woman. And the difference that she can make, not only in her life, but in so many others, because we are the nurturers, we are the moms, we are the wives, we are the daughters, we are the sisters, we are all of that. We have so much power. Stop giving it away. Step up, look at the things that I spoke about today, and grab life by the freaking lady balls and do something about it, because you deserve it. So if you guys want more information on what you can do for your PMS, or if you've got the extreme form, as some people are calling it, PMDD, please make sure that you download that link. It's up above in the post. There's a link there, so just check it out. And I'd love to be able to make sure that you guys have further information. I love this. Leslie Thomas says, men are so lucky to have us. True. All right, guys, I love you. I hope you're having an awesome Thursday night. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Don't forget to download that guide, and I'll see you next week.